Hello and welcome. It's June the 10th. Somehow we're getting really close to the middle of June, and
July.
July, June, July. I'm still in the beginning of summer. My point is the same. The time is flying by way faster than my to-do list. Seems like I'm in that cycle where I'm over stating what I think I can get done in a day. So we always overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year or 10 years. But summer's moving fast, so thanks for joining us. Um, so the first article to talk about today is that I updated the acreage article that Brent and I talked about. The idea of what's the distribution or the range of possible ending stock outcomes for corn in light of that 5 million acre decrease. Take a look at that article. It's a pretty big change. I'll grab one statistic, right? So earlier the model said there's about a 57% chance of ending stocks for corn finishing above 20%, so 20% stocks to use, and now it's somewhere around like 18 or 20%. So that's how big this acreage shift happens. Didn't take all the risk off the table, but did shift the outlook a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point in a useful way to kind of visually look at it. So, you removed some of the really couple things have happened. You've kind of removed some of the acreage, additional yield from acreage, and I think the yield distributions are they starting to narrow a little bit too, David?
So in this particular article that I did, we only looked at that acreage shift, right?
Oh, only acreage.
Only acreage. But we were talking beforehand. I think, there's a lot of chatter about yields this time of the year, right? And, USDA is coming out with a big report. That was the report here after we record this later today. Everyone usually gets upset about how they do or don't change acreage. I think they've changed corn acreage once in the last 10 years, is 2012. But you and I were talking about, it seems like we've taken the tails out of some of the yield uncertainty. We're probably not going to have 190 bushel or higher national yield, or we probably aren't going to have a 2012 like event. So we haven't modeled that into that article yet, but I think that's the other part of the situation that's going on. So we're taking out some of the tail there.
Yeah, USDA on this report has a history of not really changing the yield, right? In this, I mean, it can. I mean, obviously they can change things whenever the analysis dictates it. But at this point, this is the analyst would have to have a lot of evidence to do such, and usually that evidence they're going to wait for the yield surveys and other things to start doing that, and this estimate doesn't do that.
Yes, they can't. They have the ability to move the yields, but it would have to be an extreme movement. And then even when they move it, they sort of move it just a little bit into that direction, right? So if all of us on Twitter think it's going to be a 2012 like year, they're not going to move it down to 2020 levels, right? They're going to move it towards something below trend, but they're not going to go all the way. They need that survey stuff to really move the estimates. Of course, those come in
a little bit
August,
later,
in September. Yeah. So that's coming up to later on today. So Brent, we also have been working on thinking about the crop budgets for 2020 a little bit this week. So I guess share your thoughts real quick, and I'll see if I have anything that I agree on differently or disagree on.
Yeah, it's interesting when you start looking at the data for 2021, like where we're going to be right now. If you use like the futures prices and everything, the budget picture I was afraid was going to be really, really bad, frankly. And it turns out it's not good, but it's not what I would consider really, really bad. So part of the reason is, we've seen a pretty steady improvement in cost of production declines over the last 5 or 6 years. And so that's helping a little bit. Fertilizer prices down a little bit, some of the fixed costs falling a little bit. So those things have kind of cumulatively added up to make the budget situation not horrific, I guess, but not good, but still, I guess okay. I think it'll be one where certainly probably not going to be looking at meeting your true economic cost of production.
Yeah, I think so. A couple of years ago, you sometimes can get lucky and have a catchphrase that's pretty easy, right? So a couple of years ago, it's, if we can get $4 futures prices, we're going to get close to break even, right? So if you look at the December 21 corn futures price today, it's at 380 or so. And so that's going into this budget projection, right? And so we're not at $4. So it starts to seem very concerning when the futures prices are low, but the cost structure has improved over the last few years pretty significantly. So fertilizer prices or fertilizer expense was at the lowest it's been in the last 10 years back in the spring of this year. So that's been a huge source of improvement. Land costs and cash rent have worked their way lower. And so, really, the temptation to avoid looking at the budget is pretty strong because of the price signal, but the cost structure has continued to improve, and that's a huge source of some improvement on the ledger.
The other thing I think that is one thing I think that's a little bit concerning is that a big part of the reason financial times and farming are not a lot worse than they are now is we've had huge government payments, and those have all been ad hoc, and man, it's hard to understand what's going to happen with those things, in that far out. We're not really hearing much talk of additional, I haven't heard much discussion of additional farm program payments. I mean, have you?
No. Yesterday, there was an announcement that they're going to expand the number of commodities that could be included in the seafat program that was, back in the spring. And it got down to things like alfalfa sprouts and blueberries. But to your point, I have not heard of a program that's going to benefit or target the crops growing in the ground right now.
Yeah.
And if we don't get one of those, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really challenging for big parts of the Midwest.
Yeah, I think it's shaped up to be it'll be a tight year, because you got to remember, the other thing to remember is that the PLC payments, those are potentially on the table, but those won't come until, for this crop that's growing right now, nearing pollination. Those payments won't come till over a year from now. And the payments that are going to come on the PLC program for corn in September, October, are not going to be real big, I don't think. I mean, I've seen estimates, you might be looking at, 5-10 cents or something. Wheat is going to get a pretty big one, but corn, soybeans, no. Soybeans may never trigger a PLC payment.
It is. We were actually looking into the 2021 budgets, right? And we could look at what that price is and compared to PLC. It's not even, we have not seen a forecast that would have a PLC trigger of the soybean prices that we're looking at right now. So, so the traditional, I think, to summarize what your point is that the traditional farm bill safety nets aren't very effective at the moment. And, that's a real struggle. And there's a lot of reasons why they're not effective. And we've talked about those in earlier articles, but we can't count on ARC and PLC to save the day here in 2020. And as we finish up this calendar year, and we got to watch for those ad hoc programs. I think there's going to be I think, Brent, there's a strong chance of Congress coming back in July and passing a new stimulus program.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the USDA is waiting on is how much of it gets into the stimulus, and what kind of direction does Congress give the USDA for this. So I don't know. Stay tuned. We'll have to see what happens there. So I guess one last thing I'll share. This is something we chatted about earlier. It seems like there's just a lot. You can go on Twitter or the news or whatever, and you can find a positive story and a negative story about any topic that you want. So I was thinking about, this imaginary house that on one side it's the beach and it's hot and sunny. On the other side of the house, it's a ski resort. And if you spend time on either side, when you go inside the house, it feels differently. If you're going from the beach, it's hot. You go in, it's like, oh, this is a nice, cool house. And you go to the other extreme, the ski lift, you go in, it's like, oh, the house feels nice and warm. Well, the house is the same temperature. And it seems like we're in this situation where it is very extreme. We've had a very extreme bearish outlook in ag, in the U.S. economy, and things are starting to maybe improve just a little bit. So everyone went inside the house, and there's this group saying like, oh, hey, we've seen some improvement. And then there's another group that is yelling, saying like, no, it's not warm in here. It's cold. I just came from the beach. And really good decision makers have to really seek out a lot of information to think. So I just saw this morning articles about soybean exports at the lowest they've been in 7 years, and articles about soybean exports are really improving a lot. And so like, well, what are the implications for me as a decision maker in 2020? This is so anytime we back off the extremes, it starts to get challenging. It's an improvement of the situation, but we're probably not in a different paradigm, right? We've improved the outlook, but we haven't shifted from a bullish to a neutral or bearish situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, we always are. It seems to me we often are seeking out information that confirms whatever biases we have, and it's super easy to do today. And even sometimes it's not even confirming your bias. It's just you get heavily influenced by people's emotional take on whatever it is. And so just like you're talking about with the exports to China, right? I mean, are they really bad, or hey, are they really good? And I think, like you always say, you can write alternative headlines with the same story most of the time. And I think we just need to be aware of, how is this playing on my emotions versus what is the data really saying, and what are the facts of the situation versus the emotional side of it. Because most everything, especially on social media, is designed to get an emotional response from you, because they want engagement. They want you to like do stuff. And that's the way it's structured. And it's important to remember that.
I mean, you think about it, as you're scrolling through social media, right? You're just flipping your screen up. They're trying to write things that get you to stop and then give it a millisecond of attention. And in that millisecond of attention, they got to like get you to do something, right? So it's not like you're watching the evening news and you're like engaged and you're watching nothing else, or you're on an airplane. There's nothing else to do as they push you away from the gate because they've turned off your cell phones and all these things. And the only thing you can listen to is a safety announcement, right? There are a lot of distractions on social media, so they've got to be really the headlines got to be really catchy.
Powerful, yeah.
Powerful, supercharged.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this week. Watch out for that USDA WASDE report that drops later this morning. We'll see if there's any adjustments, and then of course keep watching those weather models. If you're on social media, every 12 hours, I think we have a new set of maps, and so I'm tired of looking at those. But we're gonna frame up the situation next week as we see the new information. So thanks for joining us. Update your forecast. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.